right, good afternoon. Welcome to our inaugural Motivation Monday. We have our chair and vice chair of our Veterans Committee kicking off this new series for us, and we're really excited to hear their stories, and they're going to share what motivation is and how this kind of some of their life experiences and how it translates into what we're facing today. So we have Jim Birkhead and Mike Lynch that are going to do their thing, and then we'll take some questions and answers at the end. Jim and Mike, thank you so much for being with us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
And just to get started here, a little disclaimer. Hey, I don't think me and Mike are claiming to know everything, have everything figured out, the be all and end all. Just trying to share some tools, some things that we've seen work when we've had the chips down, we've been in stressful situations, what we've seen work for us and our teams and people around us. So I don't know if you agree with that, Mike, but just want to get that out there.
Absolutely.
And, just kind of a little bit of background. I was in we called Marine Infantry, a couple deployments to Fallujah in Iraq when it was pretty intense there. Mike is an Army Apache pilot who did time in Afghanistan. And, I think Apaches generally are on station. Apaches are generally operating when things are not going well. So Mike has been in his fair share of pretty hot situations. And, and I look at, I think, some of our experiences and what's going on now. One of the things that really kind of jumps out at me is it's multi-layered, right? And so right now, hey, your job, your friends' jobs, people's jobs are negatively impacted by this. People being laid off, companies closing, etc. But it's just not only that, it's your vendors, it's your partners, it's your clients. Everyone around is going through a tough time as well. It's not like you can just go jump out to a bar, hang out with your friends, commiserate, talk about it, right? A lot of really special life events are cut off. You're secluded in your houses. On top of that, people are sick, people are dying. There's some tough things going on out in the world. It might be some of your family members, your friends that it's impacting as well. And a lot of your typical recourses to deal with it aren't available. And I think when you're deployed, doing with some of the things that we have done, very similar. We had a hard fight, and that you had people coming from all over the world trying to kill us and our friends. On top of that, though, there were normal Iraqis and Afghanis who were in the middle of a very tough situation that you're trying to help, people who live in really tough environments that you have to work with and try to make their lives better. On top of that, your family back home, your spouse, some of our people we know, the marriages broke up, relationships broke up, or the ones that worked, they're waiting for that knock every day on the door while they're paying bills, while they're raising kids by themselves. And then it's also a political hot button, kind of similar to what we have now, in that it's on the news. There's a lot of negative attention. It's bad. And so, I think that's kind of it's like a 360 degrees of negativity coming at you. What works? How do you stay motivated? How do you stay positive? So again, these are just some things that we've seen happen that have worked for us. First thing, I'll run through some, then Mike will run through his. I think there's some overlap, a little different perspective, but I think it all kind of comes together. Is pull the curtain back, right? It's kind of counterintuitive, but jump into the negativity a little bit and understand it better. And I think when you're a kid and you think that there's a monster in your closet, you open the closet door to, just confront it, see if that monster's in there. And it always worked for me and for us to really dive in and understand the data and understand, what was going on in our area of operations and who we were fighting and how they operated and the people on our side that were getting hurt and or dying. How specifically was that happening? And the more you understood it, the better you were able to mitigate that and to get after that. And if you look at it now economically, people in your industry, why are some companies doing better than others? Why are some companies laying off? How to avoid that? Some of your vendors, what are some problems that they're facing? How to mitigate that? How to get around that? How to get out in front of that? I think, the better you almost dive into it and understand it, the better you're able to react. And a lot of what we would do is kind of just role-playing, game playing. What if this happens? What if that happens? And what's the worst case? And I think if you think through worst case scenarios, and again, it's counterintuitive, but then you also, anything that happens that's not worst case, one, you're prepared for it because you've thought through it. And then two, hey, you're tracking better than worst case. So I think that is, we always found it a good way to operate. And we were very successful in that, knowing that we ever left the wire with was seriously injured, was killed. Now, some of that's fortunate, but some of that is the fact that we were able to not just accept, oh, things are bad, things are tough. This is going to be really hard. It's, hey, okay, let's understand it and do the best we can. And that's something that I always found to be I'm like, I don't know if you got anything to throw on that, but it's something that I always, found to work.
Yeah, plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Okay. Um, another thing I think that we always, in regards to people, is when it's a gut check, when it's stressful, the first thing I think to do is, this where I want to be? Is this what we want to do? And I think if it is something you believe in, if it is a career position that and the people around you are in it with you, then there's really nothing that can get in the way of you or stop you, and just believing in that. That, I think, we always found to be key when things got hard. We found there are some people who may not have signed up for combat in country, and that's fine. Find another seat on their bus. But you're looking at this situation we're in now, I think, just again, saying to yourself, is this position I'm currently in something that I really want to do? Are my leaders or my peers or the people that might be reporting to me, are they in this as well? If they are, then guess what? I think it's really going to just build conviction. It's going to bond you. It's going to build a stronger team element, and it's really going to make you stronger in the end. And also, you're going to have that life experience. You're going to have been through the battles. I mean, it's even a phrase, so to speak, and it's something that you will have with you forever. And I think there's a reason a lot of the training that you go through simulates in the military that hardship, simulates that stress, and it's to prepare, because again, once I think people have been through that, how to the fire, how to the metal, how to the iron, right? That's a phrase, and that's something that I think definitely bears out in this. So, and I think if, kind of vice versa, if this is a good time to kind of do that self-check. If it isn't a career, it isn't something that you truly believe in, you're truly passionate in, I think changing your seat on the bus isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think this might be a good time to either kind of double down on your course of action, or, figure out where your heart really is. Again, just something else that I've seen. And then, I think lastly, and in a way most importantly, is something I've seen very really bear out in life, particularly when we're in country, is just keep grinding, keep putting energy in, keep pushing buttons, keep mixing it up, because, and creating that environment so when things do turn or the right opportunity does present itself, you're ready. And I think kind of the story that I have behind that would be, what we call the Ambar Awakening, is that we were in the middle of a very tough fight. A lot of bad news back home. A lot of analysts, a lot of leaders say, we were losing, it was lost, it was over. We would strap it on every day, get out, do what we thought was right, put the energy in, what we called shape the battlefield. So when the people that we were opposing, they did, push it too far. They did something pretty bad to a sheik outside Ramadi's family, Ramadi being about an hour from where we were. And he came to the Americans and said, you guys are basically treating me better than they have. Can I sign up? How do you train me? Give me weapons. And he started recruiting every other tribal sheik in Al Anbar, tribes being the most important part of society there. And within a year, they all joined our side, and attacks were, had been reduced by over 90%. Markets, restaurants, schools were all opening up. And kind of the lesson I learned from that was that even kind of in the thick of it, when things do seem the most negative, that's why you do keep fighting, you keep scrapping, because whereas, like COVID comes out of nowhere, a lot of times you plan for how things are going to work out positively on the other side. But in reality, the solutions that come, they don't come from your planning. They come from you putting the energy in, creating opportunities, in a way that you never could have planned. Just like you can't, imagine something like COVID in your mind. Guess what? The solutions, I think, and the successes that come from it are something you never could have imagined. And that's where, when we were in the thick of it, we never couldn't have scripted, written a book, written a movie about the way it ended up turning out. That a lot of these tribes that we had been fighting flipped to our side, and helped us secure and create like a peaceful environment. And I think I've seen that a decent amount on the business end as well. And so, finally, I'd wrap up my portion of it by saying that I think, hey, look, I think things are pretty hard right now. Things are tough. Like I said, like I began with, and I think there's obviously a lot of, there's some negativity out there, but I think when you travel and spend time in a lot of these countries, you do realize what we have here. And I think we have a pretty good sophistication of our economy, technology, government. We have a lot of solid attributes people don't have in other parts of the world. And I would still want to be in our position versus almost anywhere else in the world, based on, what I've seen. And I think we get accustomed a lot of times to the good times, because we do have a good thing going. But if you look throughout history, and again, you look through a lot of the world, like there's struggle, there's tough things that happen, be it depressions or pandemics or wars or whatever. And this is a pretty natural part of evolution, a natural part of life, and it's something that when it happens, it's how you react to it. It determines your fate. And I think we have a lot of the tools around us that definitely coming out of this, we'll all be stronger, and I think we'll be in good shape. So, Mike, you want to?
Sure.
Do your part.
I'm just listening to you talk. I mean, you were in Fallujah. You were part of that up. You were downrange 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were in combat 06, 07. I was in combat 2013, 2014, and it's crazy how you still kind of remember all of this stuff. So something that happened for you 14 years ago still shapes you today. Something that happened to me 7 years ago still shapes me today. It's like this is an opportunity. Everyone keeps saying like this is this generation's 9/11, and I hope to God it is, frankly. But this kind of crisis, this kind of struggle is really it's gonna be solidified in people's minds, I think, that they always kind of go back to. Think like, wow, remember COVID-19. So it's, you talked about the relationships. I mean, definitely the relationships that you form going through something difficult are unlike anything else. Nobody knows the suck like people who you've gone through it with. Kind of want to start off by saying, Jim and I had, I would say, very different experiences. He's a humble guy, but I'll tell you, I mean, he was going door to door to some of the worst fighting in Iraq. Things happened to him. They did a lot of planning, but the whole plan for the worst, hope for the best thing. I think the worst in a lot of cases for the guys, the Marines in particular, the worst was kind of bad. So my experience was I never had somebody stick an AK-47 in my face. I was a pilot. I was an attack pilot, and I usually showed up. I was the 911 call, and
you guys are very good at that. Thank God for you guys.
Yeah. So I usually showed up, and things got pretty quiet after that. But I just kind of wanted to draw that comparison because I think it kind of draws a comparison to this crisis. At first, it's almost like you were the soldiers on the ground. Things were just kind of happening to you. Bad guys kept popping out of windows because, at first we were just kind of so reactionary, and we were hearing news by the hour with updates. So things happen very quickly when you're the guy on the ground, when you're getting the weapon pointed in your face. As a pilot, you kind of have the luxury of going into a more mature battle space. And by that, I mean, things kind of happen slower, which is, I think, maybe the phase we're getting into now, where, news isn't developing as rapidly as it had, back in February and March. We kind of have a handle on, what this disease is like. Very early stages of kind of have, some idea of what the economic realities are. So, I hope that that's kind of the phase that we're in now, is that things are kind of slowing down a little bit and we can be more deliberate in the actions that we take. One of the things that we always say, and, it's probably true for Marines, but we said it in the Army, is you have to embrace the suck. And the suck is whatever hard time you're going through. I think there's a lot of merit to that because you're not trying to downplay the real emotional, physical, financial toll that this is happening. You have to give it the acknowledgement that, yes, this is very difficult, but you have to internalize it, own it, and then kind of flip your crazy switch a little bit. I think this thing with the Delco happy hour is awesome. We have cousins in Italy, and they're partying between balconies in Italy. you have to kind of have a dark sense of humor with it in order to get through difficult times. Quick story with that is, I was stationed up at Fort Drum, which is kind of a polar hell. It's right off of Lake Ontario, and you do field problems, to build resiliency, meaning you'd stay in the field for a couple weeks at a time. When you do that in a blizzard, it's minus 15. That's what some people would call the sun. So just, how your mindset changes things. One soldier, when it was really bad, total whiteout, couldn't see anything, actually stripped down naked and started making snow angels. So that's, and it kind of just, it turned everyone's mentality. It's like, all right, yeah, this is really hard, but we're going to have some fun with it. And, everyone's worried, everyone's broke, everyone is not sure about the future. So if you can do things like the Delco happy hour where you're posting videos and having a good time with your neighbors, that's just going to make this, those are the things you're going to remember going forward, not the worry, not the concern. I think especially for business professionals, business owners, managers, we go through the self-preservation versus self-sacrifice thing. When I see, Bill Sprague has hopped on from Risk Averse. He's a managing partner of his company. He's got people working for him, and anyone who, even Trish. I mean, even you have to have that internal dialogue. I mean, what's best for the organization? What's best for me? And what's best for the people who are under my care? And that's a really hard moral dilemma for a leader to go through. I mean, in this particular case, do you lay people off? Are they better off getting unemployment? Especially with this, the stimulus bill and all that. What about their health care? Do you keep paying that? It's a tough decision to make. And the best, I guess, piece of advice that I've learned is sometimes, I'm not suggesting this necessarily for every business, but sometimes you have to kind of see the big picture. A tactical loss versus a strategic loss. We would get these 911 calls all the time to go out and make the bad guys go away. And there's one particular time where the weather was garbage, and helicopters don't like to fly into clouds in a mountainous environment, right? So we kind of had to make that. Of course, any leader is going to care about the people who rely on them for help. Of course, we want to go. We want to run out to the aircraft, spin up, and help these guys. But you had to take a step back. And it was actually my boss at the time, kind of pulling the reins and be like, "Look, dude, if you go smacking into a mountain, that's going to be a much bigger problem than a couple of guys harassing our people." So that's sort of the strategic loss versus tactical loss decision that I don't envy having to make anymore. But I know for a lot of business owners, my neighbor's a business owner. He had to make that gut call to let his people go early on and kind of hope for the best. Because if he bleeds himself dry, then there's no company to come back to. So that's hopefully a lesson that I've learned that you can use for your own businesses. Just a couple more topics is that integrity is something that can't always be perfect. You're never going to be the perfect boss. You're never going to be the perfect employee. You're never going to, have the best sales this month or whatever. I mean, in times of crisis, in times of difficulty, it's tempting to take shortcuts. It's tempting to skip steps. But this as a leader, as a business owner, this is where you codify your reputation and your standing within your organization. If you're doing the right thing, if you're perfect in your integrity, your employees, your friends, your neighbors, they're all going to remember you for that. And a big one, Jim probably saw it way more than me, was rules of engagement. We all knew that, rules of engagement were sort of this hierarchy of criteria in which we could engage or not engage. And I'm sure in Iraq, you had opportunities to kind of play in that gray area. I'm sure. I mean, we certainly did 7 years later. You always have to be the person to be black and white. And if you're a restaurant owner, make sure you're wearing the mask. Don't sell expired food. I used to work at Blitz's in Ocean City. I got horror stories there. But be the leader that you want your people looking up to when this thing is done. And your integrity is going to be the thing that people remember. It's easy to criticize positions of authority in all of this. Everyone's looking for a blame. Everyone's looking for, all right, whose fault is it and how do we fix it? Kind of goes back to my first point of embrace the suck. This is the reality. This is the situation we're in from a pandemic standpoint, from an economic standpoint, education standpoint. This is where we are. Use this as an opportunity to dust off complacency. Jimmy made a great point about taking a look at your own situation, your own career. Is this somewhere you want to be? Do you maybe have a leader or a boss at work who doesn't have the integrity that you would expect during a time of crisis? So be the follower that you would want as a leader, and keep your integrity no matter what. Last plug, I'll throw it in there. I would be disingenuous if I didn't say this, but throughout my military career, throughout my life now, my faith has been a big part of that. I know God is up to something, and I'm just happy to see it through. So that's my little spiel. Happy to share more war stories if anybody has any other questions.
I think there are a couple questions.
Yep. Can you guys talk about how this situation affected your businesses and how you've responded? I know you're both in completely different worlds where, Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about, how this has affected you? Because I know that you're in a unique situation. Then Mike, you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think like everyone has been affected in some way. Obviously I think some businesses, due to the nature of it, will come out, if you go in a grocery store, you're in a better position than if you work in a cruise line right now, right? It's just the basics of it. So yeah, no, we've been hit. We in particular, we have a insurance program for independent contractors in the trucking industry. So I think probably not as hardly hit as some people, but it is there. How we've adjusted, like I said, just kind of applying what I've lived through, just trying to understand every single thing I can about the macro, and then how does it fit down into how we always talk about strategic versus tactical, the tactical of like our day to day, and knowing that hey, accepting we are going to take hits, like this is happening, not letting that distract you, not letting that get you down, but then there are going to be wins as well, and just knowing that I think a lot of times when it might seem the darkest, when I think what you do when things seem the hardest is what shapes the result, is what creates that. So knowing that, I think by and large, we're going to be okay through a lot of the activities that we're taking, understanding we are going to take some hits, and then just realistically figuring out how to mitigate that and how to build off of that. That's kind of a general answer, not too specific. And I think I kind of tie that into someone else. Gregory asked a question: how do you guys set goals and you can't contact your customers? Again, what I would say is just what we're doing is just, again, not that we're perfect, but accepting what it is and operating within those limits, so to speak. And that, look, like I can't fly. Usually I'm traveling 2 to 3 weeks out of a month. I can't do that right now. Figuring out where people are at, how to meet them, how to get to them. And people are going to grow during this. Some people are going to do better than others, and knowing that too, that it's not all negative. Someone's going to figure out how to get around this. Someone's going to figure out how to get ahead. How do we do that? And a lot of that is, I think, creative and putting that work into figuring out how to get to the people that we need to get to. Mike?
I'm very blessed to have multiple clients who are staying with us through this. My dad and I manage people's money for a living, and we do financial planning. this is a major financial hurdle for a lot of folks. We have some people, a client who is planning on retiring this year, and like, does that change? I think how we've pivoted is just reinforcing our own fundamentals. In finance, there's a rule book. There's the Warren Buffetts of the world. They stick to their guns no matter what. When there's blood in the streets, they're buying. When things get frothy, they're selling. We've just adjusted, frankly, by not doing a whole lot different, and by reinforcing to our clients that this is a temporary thing, being opportunistic where there's value, but not doing anything we wouldn't do in a normal market condition.
One last thing I'd throw in on that, and just to kind of wrap up, I think what I was trying to say is that when we're in country, I'm looking at what are units doing wrong, why are they losing Marines, why aren't they operating as successfully as they may be able to within their area of operations. But then it's also what are the units that are doing right, the units that do have the lower casualty counts, units that have, and I think the same thing is that a lot of the press seems to be on companies that are, things that aren't working out. And you need to understand those too, but then also through every recession, like companies and people have succeeded. What have they done? Another way of looking at it, because there always is. You don't see it in the news a lot, but there are people that are coming out that are succeeding and mimicking them and their thought process. Anything else?
Any other questions? If anybody doesn't want to type in the chat box, if you want to either raise your hand and we can unmute you, we can allow you to talk, but we can give a minute or two just to see if there's any last questions. I want to thank Jim and Mike for everything today. You guys are amazing. And, from our day-to-day interactions with each other, you never realize what's below the surface in people, to use that. But the things that you have seen, the things that you have done for us, for our country, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody. We are truly grateful for that. And I don't think we'll ever be able to repay you, but we thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. I know, right? I thank you for sharing your stories with us today, because I really do think that it does translate into what we're all dealing with today. Maybe not exactly, but you guys are pretty awesome. So, and we're really lucky to have you as our chair and vice chair of our Veterans Committee. So
we're lucky to have you too. The Chamber's doing a fantastic job. No, seriously, the Chamber's doing a fantastic job of staying relevant for its members, pushing out information. I mean, this CARES Act and everything that's developing, you guys are, tip of the spear on that. So good on you and your team over there.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I think Diane had said she wants to share
okay.
Negative into a positive.
Okay, Diane. Oh, wait, hold on. We're going to unmute you here, Diane. If you want to, if you want to unmute yourself, we have you ready to go.
Mute myself.
There you go. You're good, Diane. If you want to.
Thank you. Well, I applaud you guys for your service and for everyone taking the time to do this. And for Trish, your leadership is just incredible. And like you two guys said, there are things in our past that have helped us to deal with all this. As Trish knows, I had cancer when I was 42 with a 3-year-old son and a marketing company. So there was a lot of coping skills I learned through that are helping me through this. The fear of the unknown. Problems are wake-up calls for creativity. I've heard that in a seminar a long time ago, and that's always resonated in my head. And I always tried to turn a negative into a positive. That was always my way of coping with things, to use the skills God gave me. So during that journey with cancer, I became the spokesperson for people with colon cancer under 50. And I wrote a lot of articles about it to increase awareness of it. And with this issue, I've been making masks for the last 4 weekends. So it empowers people to do good things and to use the skills God gave you. And I wrote in a journal. I do a lot of walking. I mean, we all have our own way of coping and dealing with stress. So there's some of the things that I've been doing. And some days you got to put the blinders on because there's so much negativity, you know, between the paper, the news, the this, the emails, the that. You just got to keep your blinders on and stay focused and whatever. We all have our ways of dealing with stress, and we got to tap into them, and talking and walking and connecting, and they're all things we need. And I look at my parents' generation. My parents were good friends with Trisha's granddad. That's a generation that got through the Depression. So I look at the skills I learned from my parents and that generation on being frugal, being nice, being polite. They're the things we need now. And let's all practice it.
If you were born in about 1900, by the time you were 70, you lived through the Spanish flu, the Depression, World War II, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Like, yeah, so.
I know. Isn't it?
Yeah, incredible.
Our big thing was 9/11. I mean, our son was in kindergarten, and I sheltered him from that intentionally. And then in 2008, when the economy tanked, I had a business. I had to lay off my husband. I had to lay off my best friend. It was heart-wrenching. So, you know, we've been through all that. And now that my son's 24, I said, look, dude, you're out in this world. You're out working too. This is infecting you. I can't shelter you from these things anymore. You know, you're not a little kid. So he's got to learn his own way of coping. Yep. And this will be his generation's thing.
Absolutely. Diane, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you cope with these things. We really appreciate that. And I know that's very personal. So thank you so much. Jim and Mike, thank you again. You guys are true heroes, and for you to be able to kind of inspire us with a little bit of your wisdom, we are so appreciative of that. Just wanted to go over a couple upcoming things we have this week. Tomorrow morning, we have Villanova University talking about how you can utilize their interns right now. They have a new program for small businesses that might need help with some social media and website presence. So that's something that everybody should join and learn how to navigate that process. And then tomorrow afternoon, we'll have an update on some business funding. We'll have an update on the county funding that was just announced Friday, and more updates on the PPP and what's happening with that process. And on Wednesday afternoon, we will have a seminar about opening up Delco. We're going to be talking about what we need to do to open up safely and strategically. We know that we need to take steps to start to open again, but we need to do so with keeping everybody's health and safety in mind. So we're going to have a webinar about that, about what businesses are doing, and hopefully we can share tips with one another. So take a look at the, start with the Dairy Cottage. I know the owner's wife. Yeah, the owner's wife has COVID, so they are So thank you so much, and check out our calendar of events, and we will talk to you all soon. Jim, Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.